The desert wind howled like a banshee as I slammed on the brakes, my rental Jeep skidding across the gravel road outside Taos, New Mexico. Bullets pinged off the hood before I could even process the black SUV barreling toward me from the shadows of the mesa. And then, in the split second before the world went black, I heard her voice, my editor's last words echoing in my earbuds. Juliet, this story on the cartel disappearances isn't worth dying for. I woke to the metallic tang of blood in my mouth and the bite of zip ties cutting into my wrists. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and motor oil. A makeshift basement somewhere deep in the Chihuahuan desert, judging by the faint rumble of semis on I-10 above. My head throbbed from the blow that had knocked me out. And my notebook, my goddamn lifeline, was gone, along with my phone and the tiny recorder tucked in my bra. Panic clawed at my chest, but I forced it down. I'd chased stories from the flooded streets of Houston after Harvey to the opioid-ravaged trailer parks of Appalachia. This was just another beat. Except this time, I was the story. They didn't bother with masks, why would they? Out here, in this godforsaken stretch of New Mexico where the cartels funneled bodies and product north like it was just another Tuesday shipment, witnesses didn't last long enough to pick faces out of a lineup. The one who dragged me in was a wiry guy with a snake tattoo curling up his neck, his breath reeking of cheap tequila and menthols.
La periodista, spat,
shoving me onto a stained mattress in the corner. You think poking around our missing girls makes you a hero? Boss says we make an example. His partner, a hulking brute with a shaved head and cartel ink blooming across his knuckles, just laughed, cracking his fists like he was warming up for a prize fight. I twisted against the restraints, my mind racing through escape routes. The door was heavy steel, padlocked from the outside, and the single bulb swinging overhead cast jittery shadows that made the concrete walls feel like they were closing in. I'd come to Taos chasing leads on the vanishings, young women from the pueblos and border towns, snatched for trafficking rings that preyed on the invisible. My last piece for the Albuquerque Journal had blown the lid off a similar operation in El Paso, earning me a byline and a death threat. But this was personal. One of the missing was Sofia Alvarez, a 19-year-old artist I'd mentored back in my J-school days at Her sketchbook, filled with vibrant desert florals, had washed up on the Rio Grande. I had to find her trail. Hours blurred into a haze of dehydration and dread. Snake Tattoo came back once, tossing a water bottle at my feet and a stale tortilla that tasted like regret. Eat, puta. We move you at dawn. Move me where? Cross the border? Into some hellhole in Juarez? My throat burned as I whispered a prayer. Not to God, but to the fierce queer gods of survival I'd invoked since coming out at 19 in a Bible Belt dorm room. By midnight, hallucinations crept in. Sofia's face morphing into my ex's, the one who'd ghosted me after I chose the job over our white picket dreams in Austin. You're always running toward the fire, Jules, she'd said. Yeah. Well, fire was warmer than this void. Then, the lock clicked. Not the heavy padlock, but something softer, deliberate. The door creaked open, and in stepped a woman who looked like she'd crawled out of the pages of a Cormac McCarthy novel, tall, with sun-bleached black hair pulled into a messy ponytail, wearing scuffed cowboy boots and a faded Levi's jacket that hung loose on her wiry frame. Her face was all sharp angles and quiet intensity, hazel eyes scanning the room like she owned the shadows. Mid-30s, maybe, with a faint scar tracing her jawline, the kind earned from barbed wire or a bar fight. She carried a tire iron in one gloved hand, and for a split second, I thought she was here to finish what Snake Tattoo started. But she didn't. Instead, she crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to her knees beside me. "Shua," she murmured, her voice low and smoky, laced with that southwestern drawl that could charm rattlers. "I'm getting you out. Name's Elena. Can you walk?" Her hands were steady as she sliced through the zip ties with a pocket knife, but there was a tremor in her touch, like she was fighting her own ghosts. I rubbed my wrist, blood rushing back in pins and needles, and stared at her. Who the hell was she? Accomplice? Rival cartel? Or just another ghost in this machine of madness? We didn't have time for questions. Gunfire echoed from upstairs, muffled pops that shook dust from the rafters. Elena yanked me to my feet, her arm strong around my waist as we bolted for a side hatch I'd missed in the gloom. The night air hit like a slap, cool and laced with creosote from the creosote bushes clawing at the canyon walls. We sprinted toward a battered Ford F-150 hidden in a dry arroyo, her boots kicking up red dirt that stung my eyes. "Get in," she barked, firing up the engine as headlights swept the ridge behind us. Tires spun, gravel flying, and we tore into the black heart of the mesa, the SUV's roar fading like a bad memory. I collapsed against the passenger door, heart hammering, as the truck bounced over rutted tracks. Elena's profile was etched in the glow of the dashboard, high cheekbones, full lips pressed into a thin line of focus. "Why?" I gasped, finally finding my voice. "Who are you?" She glanced at me. Just a flicker, but it was enough to send a spark through the adrenaline crash. Close. She was beautiful in that rugged, unapologetic way, olive skin glowing under the faint moonlight, a smudge of grease on her collarbone where her shirt gaped open. "Someone who knows what it's like to lose everything to those bastards," she said, eyes back on the road. "And you? You're Juliet Reyes, right? The reporter who's got half the state whispering your name. Word travels fast in these parts, even in the dark." We drove in silence for what felt like hours, the radio crackling with static bursts of mariachi and emergency alerts. My body ached, but the fear ebbed into something warmer, more dangerous, gratitude laced with curiosity. Elena pulled off near a crumbling adobe ruin off Highway 68, killing the lights and handing me a thermos of coffee, black, scalding, like she'd read my soul. "Rest here till dawn. I'll drop you at the sheriff's in Santa Fe," I sipped, watching her lean against the hood, lighting a cigarette with a Zippo that bore a faded Navajo sun symbol. "You didn't have to risk your neck," I said softly. She exhaled smoke toward the stars, her gaze distant. "Maybe I did." World short on heroes who actually give a damn. That night, under a sky bruised with constellations, we talked. Not about the cartel. Not yet, just fragments. She was a former wildland firefighter, burned out after a blaze took her partner's life up in the Gila. Lena, she'd called her, short for Magdalena, a quiet painter who dreamed of galleries in Santa Fe. Elena's voice cracked on the details, raw as an open wound, and I found myself sharing too, the ache of my own breakup, the queer invisibility of chasing stories in straight-laced newsrooms, the way Sophia's disappearance had cracked something fundamental in me. Our hands brushed passing the thermos, and electricity hummed, tentative, electric, the kind of pull that defies deserts and danger. By sunrise, as we rolled into Santa Fe's outskirts, I knew I couldn't just walk away. "Come with me," I said, impulsive as hell. "To the station. Testify. We can end this." Elena's laugh was bitter, like chicory in weak coffee. It's not that simple, Jules. But yeah. Maybe. She dropped me at the Adobe station house, her truck idling like a getaway plan. Our goodbye was a loaded glance, her fingers lingering on mine, calloused, warm, promising more than words. I watched her taillights fade, my statement spilling out to a skeptical deputy who smelled like donuts and doubt. But inside, a fire kindled. Elena wasn't just a savior, she was a story. And damn if I wasn't falling for the plot twist. File 1 END word count, 1012. The days after blurred into a frenzy of depositions and dead ends. The sheriff's office in Santa Fe was a relic, peeling paint. Overworked clerks shuffling reports on everything from petty thefts to cartel hits. My bruises faded. But the nightmares didn't. Snake tattoos leer. The basement's chill seeping into my bones. I filed my story from a dingy motel off Cerrillos Road, titling it Ghosts of the Border, the women vanishing into New Mexico's shadows. It went viral overnight, retweets from ACLU lawyers, op-eds in the New York Times calling for federal probes. Sophia's face became the hook. Her sketches reprinted like icons of the forgotten. But Elena haunted me more than the headlines. I scoured every database I had access to, public records, firefighter rosters, even queer networks on Reddit and the old Lambda forums. Elena Vasquez, 32, out of Albuquerque. Discharged honorably after that Gila fire in 22. Where flames claimed her fiancé and 3 others. No priors. No socials. Just a P.O. box in the boonies near Abiquiu. I drove out there on a whim. 3 days post-rescue. My Jeep rattling over potholes lined with chamisa blooming yellow against the red rock. The address led to a sun-baked ranch house. Sagging porch strung with chili restras. A corral holding a lone mare that nickered at my approach. She was there, knee-deep in hay, forking it into a trough with the easy grace of someone who'd wrestled wildfires. Sweat gleamed on her neck, her tank top clinging to the curve of her shoulders. "Knew you'd come sniffing," she said without turning, her voice carrying that same smoky timbre. I stepped out, heart thudding like a war drum. Had to thank you properly. Dinner? My treat. There's a spot in town does killer green chili enchiladas. She paused, pitchfork hovering, then flashed a grin that crinkled her eyes. Only if you promise not to interrogate me over the sopapillas. That night at Rancho de Chimayo, under Vegas laden with dried sage, we pretended it was a date. Candlelight danced across her face, softening the scar. And her laugh, deep, unguarded, unraveled me. We talked art. Sophia's florals echoing Lena's abstracts. Lost in a storage unit Elena couldn't afford. We talked loss. My mom's slow fade from Alzheimer's in a Phoenix care home. Elena's abuela's rosary beads clutched during her chemo vigils. And when the mariachi strummed a haunting Cielito Lindo, her hand found mine across the table, thumb tracing circles that sent heat pooling low in my belly. "Your trouble, Juliet Reyes," she whispered, leaning in. Our first kiss tasted of mole and possibility, soft, searching, blooming into something fierce as we tumbled into my motel room later, shedding clothes like old skins. Making love to Elena was like storming a blaze, urgent, consuming. Her body mapping mine with hands that knew fire lines and fault lines alike. She was all contrasts, gentle with my ribs still tender from the basement, then fierce, pinning me to the sheets with a hunger that mirrored my own. "God, Jules," she gasped against my throat, her breath hitching as I arched into her touch. "You feel like coming home." We tangled until dawn, Whispers weaving futures. Me pulling her into my world of bylines and bourbon nights. Her teaching me to ride. To read the wind before it turns vicious. For the first time since Sophia vanished, I felt anchored not to a story, but to a woman who saw me. Scars and all. But cracks spiderwebbed in fast. My editor called the next morning. Voice tight. Feds are circling your cartel piece. But watch your back, word is. Someone's gunning for loose ends. Elena tensed beside me. Her arm tightening around my waist. You should lay low, she said. Too quick. Her eyes flicking to the window. I brushed it off, chalking it to paranoia. But doubt not. That afternoon, digging deeper for Elena's file, I hit pay dirt, a sealed juvenile record from '09, expunged assault charge in Roswell. Victim? A low-level coyote linked to the same ring I'd infiltrated. Coincidence? Or was my knight in faded Levi's carrying a blade of her own? We spent the next week in a fever dream of stolen moments, hikes through the slot canyons of Kashakatui, where she'd point out petroglyphs like ancient love letters carved in stone, lazy afternoons in her hammock, her head on my lap as I read aloud from Joan Didion's essays on the American West. Sex became our language, slow and reverent one night, her fingers spelling confessions against my skin, playful and teasing the next, laughter bubbling as we chased each other through wildflower fields. I could love you, I admitted one evening, tracing the tattoo on her inner wrist, a phoenix rising from ashes, inked after Lena. Elena's smile faltered. Just a shadow. Before she pulled me close. Don't say that yet. Mi luz. World's got teeth. The teeth sank in on a Tuesday. I was back in Taos, chasing a tip on Sophia, a burner phone ping from a stash house near the high road. Elena insisted on coming. Back up, she called it, loading a Glock into her glove box with a casualness that chilled me. We parked a mile out, trekking through pinyon thickets under a merciless sun. The house was a squat bunker, windows boarded. But as we crept closer, voices drifted Spanish, laced with menace.
La periodistas digging todo.
Vasquez knows, tell the boss she's flipped. My blood iced. Elena, flipped? I spun to her. But she was already moving. Silent as smoke. Slipping through the scrub toward the back door. Wait, I hissed. But she waved me off. Her face a mask I'd never seen, cold, calculated. Gunfire erupted inside. Sharp and staccato. Followed by a scream that curdled the air. I bolted after her. Heart in my throat. Bursting into a kitchen reeking of fierce sweat and spilled tequila. Two bodies slumped against the fridge, snake tattoo and his shaved head pal. Blood pooling like spilled ink. Elena stood over them. Glock smoking. Her chest heaving. What the hell? Elena. I choked. Staring at the carnage. She holstered the gun, wiping her face with a trembling hand. They were gonna move Sophia tonight. Cross the line. I couldn't. Her voice broke, and she reached for me, but I recoiled. You knew them. You set this up. The words hung heavy. The room spinning. She'd saved me. Yes, but from her own web? The phoenix on her wrist mocked me now. Wings dipped in fresh red. She didn't deny it. Not fully. As sirens wailed distant, she grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the truck. Listen, Jules. It's not what you think. I was undercover Fed informant, 2 years deep. But it got personal. Lena. She didn't die in that fire. The cartel torched her place, thinking she saw too much. I went rogue after that, playing both sides to gut them from inside. Lies? Truth? Her eyes pleaded. Hazel depths swirling with the same storm I'd fallen for. We peeled out, dust clouding our escape, but the rift yawned wide. In the cab, silence stretched taut as barbed wire. You should have told me, I whispered finally, tears hot on my cheeks. I thought we were building something real. Elena's grip whitened on the wheel. We are. But trust me, this ends tonight. Or it ends us. We didn't go back to the ranch. Elena veered north instead, toward the Jemez Mountains where volcanic springs steamed like Earth's confessions, and the air hummed with secrets older than the Spanish conquest. One night, she said, voice raw as we bumped up a fire road scarred by old burns. To explain. Then you decide. The cabin was a hunter's shack. Off-grid and forgotten. Kit with solar lanterns and a wood stove that crackled to life under her hands. Outside, Ponderosis whispered in the wind, a far cry from the desert's brutal honesty. She poured us whiskey from a flask etched with Lena's initials, smooth, peaty stuff that burned going down in loosened tongues. We sat on a threadbare rug by the fire, knees touching, the space between us electric with unspoken accusations. Elena started slow, her recruitment by the feds after Lena's accident, the slow bleed of her soul as she embedded with the coyotes, trading intel for glimpses of the girls they broke. Sophia was the trigger, she admitted, staring into the flames. I found her sketchbook washed up. Same as you. Recognized her style from a workshop in Albuquerque. Knew I had to pull you out before they used you as bait. Bait. The word landed like a gut punch. I'd been a mark from the jump, my nosing around house a perfect lure for their trap. And the rescue? Staged. My voice cracked. Betrayal twisting like a knife. Elena's face crumpled, and she cupped my cheek, thumb brushing a tear. No. That was me going off script. Seeing you in that basement. Broke something. Reminded me why I started this nightmare. Her touch ignited old fires. And against my better judgment, I leaned in. Our kiss was desperate. A collision of grief and greed, lips bruising. Hands roaming like we could map forgiveness through flesh. We made love on that rug. Firelight gilding our skin. Her body a landscape I knew by heart. The dip of her waist. The salt of her neck. The way she gasped my name like a prayer. But it was laced with sorrow now. Each thrust a plea. Each sigh a fracture. Afterward, tangled in a wool blanket, she traced my collarbone. I love you, Jules. Fell the first night, under those stars. But if you walk, I get it. I wanted to believe her, God. How I did. In her arms, the world narrowed to this, two women forged in fire, queer and unyielding against a land that chewed up dreamers. Dawn brought the hammer. My phone, recharged on the cabin's jury-rigged outlet, lit up with voicemails from my editor. Feds raided the Tau stash last night. Bodies match your descriptions. And Reyes? They're asking for you. And some informant named Vasquez. Panic surged. Elena was already up, brewing coffee. Her back to me as she stared out at the mist-shrouded valleys. It's over, she said quietly. Boss man Rico, he's the ghost. Runs everything from a compound in the Sangres. Sophia's there. With a dozen others. One last play, we hit it. Extract them. Blow the whole op wide. We. The word hooked me. Despite the screams in my head. I was a reporter. Not Rambo. But Sophia's eyes, wide and trusting in that old photo, flashed like a beacon. And Elena. Leaving her felt like amputating half my soul. I'm in, I said. Voice steadier than I felt. But no more lies. She turned. Hazel eyes fierce with something unbreakable. Swear it. The drive to the Sangre de Cristo foothills was a descent into hell's antechamber. Winding passes where aspens shivered gold. Dropping into canyons veined with hidden veins of evil. Elena's truck blended with the locals, ranchers hauling feed. Artists fleeing city smog, but her knuckles whitened on the wheel. The compound was a fortress masquerading as a vineyard, razor wire glinting amid grapevines. Guards patrolling with AKs slung casual as six-shooters. We'd cased it via drone footage Elena hacked from a Fed contact. Plotting entry through a dry creek bed at dusk. Adrenaline was a cruel mistress, sharpening senses to a razor's edge. We slipped in under twilight's camouflage. Elena leading with the grace of a cougar, me trailing. Heart slamming. A stolen Beretta heavy in my untrained grip. Whispers guided us. Sophia's name murmured in a locked bunkhouse. Girls huddled like sparrows in a storm. We freed them in a blur, 6 souls. Wide-eyed and whispering gracias as Elena cut bonds. Me herding them toward the creek. Hope flickered. Fragile as matchlight. Then, betrayal's jaws snapped. Rico's voice boomed from the shadows. Vasquez. You traitorous bitch. He stepped into the moonlight. A silver-haired devil in guayabera and loafers. Flanked by 4 goons. Elena froze. Gun raised. But Rico's laugh slithered like oil. Think the feds care about your little crusade? They cut you loose months ago. After you botched that El Paso drop and cost us $3 million. Lies? Or the dark motive I'd feared? Elena's face drained of color. Gun wavering. Bullshit. I delivered. A shot cracked the air. Elena crumpled. Blood blooming dark on her thigh. The Beretta skittering away. Chaos erupted, guards advancing. Girls screaming. My world narrowing to Rico's sneer. Your reporter pet? Bonus. 2 birds. 1 stone. Rage ignited. Pure and blinding. I fired wild. Clipping a goon's shoulder. Buying seconds to drag Elena behind a barrel. Stay with me, I begged. Pressing my jacket to the wound. Her blood hot and slick. Her eyes, glazing, locked on mine. Jules. Love you. Always.
A sobitori from me love.
Too late named. Too soon stolen. The cavalry arrived in a roar. Fed choppers thumping overhead. Spotlights piercing the night like divine wrath. Rico's men scattered. The boss himself tackled mid-stride. Paramedics swarmed. Hauling Elena onto a stretcher as I clutched Sophia's hand. Alive. Trembling. But whole. You came, the girl whispered. Her sketchbook clutched like a talisman. I nodded. Numb. As Elena's gurney wheeled past. Our eyes met one last time, hers soft. Forgiving. Write it true, she mouthed. Then gone. The aftermath was a media circus. Indictments. Congressional hearings. My byline splashed across Vanity Fair as The Desert Reckoning. Sophia healed. Her art blooming in a Santa Fe co-op funded by my Pulitzer check. Queer icons of resilience. Pinks and golds defying the dark. But Elena? The bullet nicked an artery. She flatlined twice en route to an hospital. I sat vigil in that sterile room for days. Holding her hand. Whispering stories of canyons and comets. Of a love that burned brighter than any blaze. She woke on the 6th day. groggy but grinning that crooked smile. Told you. Teeth. The feds confirmed it. Rico's lie. A desperate Hail Mary. Elena's intel had cracked the ring wide, saving dozens more. But the cost? Her leg would scar. Her trust in badges shattered. We rebuilt slow therapy sessions in Albuquerque coffee shops, rides through the high road where we'd first kissed, nights where touch was tentative, then triumphant. A year on, as snow dusted the treacherous peaks, we stood on her ranch porch rebuilt, ours now, watching Sophia's latest exhibit photos arrive via text. Elena's arm around my waist, strong despite the limp. Happy? She asked, breath fogging the chill air. Turn, kissing her slow, the desert stretching endless behind us. With you? Always. In America's wild heart. We'd forged something human, flawed, feared, forever. Not a fairy tale, but real as red rock, love's quiet revolution against the void.